Welcome back to my channel. I'm here in my lovely place and I'm doing something a little bit different today. I do have some art projects that I'm currently working on and hopefully some good ideas that are coming down the pipeline. So stay tuned for that. I thought I'd do something a little bit different today and share a little bit about my trip to San Diego Comic-Con this year. I do happen to live in the beautiful city of San Diego. So while I might not have one of those huge studio spaces and aesthetic spaces you see on most YouTube art channels, I do have the privilege of going to San Diego Comic-Con every year, so can't really complain about that. So I would say this year was kind of a transformative Comic-Con experience for me. When you think of Comic-Con, you usually think about the big Hollywood stars, the big convention center floor with huge booths, lots of statues, lots of rare exclusives that you can only get there, and things like that. And all of that's true. There's big Hollywood panels, lots of great TV panels too. I went to a couple of those. Great artists on the convention center floor and exclusives. Grabbed a couple of those as well. But I just wanted to spend more time this year focusing on artists, more independent artists, and then hearing from people that are experts in the field to see their process and their work. So that was really important to me this year. So one of the places where you can do that in the convention center is room 3. They call it the how-to room. It's one of the smaller rooms. It doesn't fit too many people, but just enough for those of us that are trying to learn and hone their skills in maybe coloring or drawing or comic book artistry. So even though I don't consider myself an illustrator or a comic book artist, I do tend to lead towards that aesthetic. And I don't mind learning from those folks so I can integrate some of that into my work. So for an example, one of the artists I saw in room 3 is Brian Haberlin. He's well known in the comic book industry. I'll share a little bit of info on him. And he had some really, really great advice for comic book artists on how to create dynamic panels and things like that. So while I don't generally do comic books as my style of art, he gave some really great pointers and tips on creating a composition for a comic book panel that is like dynamic and attention engaging. And I thought to myself, even though this isn't necessarily my style, there's nothing to say that as an artist, I couldn't integrate this sort of technique into my work, right? He also had some really great techniques on lettering. He had some great programs that he uses for comic book lettering. And again, it's not something I naturally thought of for my work, but using that kind of software for lettering certainly could be useful for things I plan to do in the future. So I thought that was really, really great and insightful stuff to learn. Some of the other stuff he talked about is really kind of getting with the times because he's been an artist for a long, long time, but he understands kind of integrating into the modern world and kind of where print comics have, transformed, and it's now kind of digital age these days, right? A lot of digital comics, and that's where all of the kind of subscribers and things like that are at. It's really hard time for print comics. It's not dead. He didn't say it was dead, but it's more difficult, right? So digital comics is where it's at. So he talked about learning things like 3D modeling, and that's so integral for learning how to draw. And learning to draw is something I'm still playing around with. I am not a skilled drawer by any means. I can take a picture, I can look at it, and I can draw what I see to a certain extent, and I can translate what I see to a certain extent. But when it comes to things like form and value and things like that, those are things I need to relearn or kind of up my skills on, which is pretty much the whole point of this channel, right? I'm challenging myself to learn different things and develop my style as an artist. So Brian Haberlin, he was a really great panelist, and the person that runs that room, by the way, the moderator, he is a really, really great moderator as well. He always asks really insightful questions and always knows what to ask, even when those of us just kind of sitting in the audience might not know what to say. So on top of Brian Haberlin, I also went to a coloring panel with Alison Son, who is the wife of Adam Hughes, which is a very famous comic book artist in his own right. And she refers to herself as famously known as the wife of Adam Hughes. So, but she's a great colorist and illustrator in her own right. And one of the really great things that I learned from her is that she likes to draw and she likes to color, but she uses reference photos. And she really solidified and reassured artists that using references is not a cheat. It's not a bad thing at all. So I really appreciated that. She did a live coloring. So she took a reference photo, and I'll share that. She took the reference photo and she started showing her techniques. Now, while she did use markers for her coloring, she did reference some of the techniques and how they might be used with watercolor too, which is, primarily the medium in which I use. So I think a lot of the things that she said was helpful.
What I'm doing here applies to just about any color medium that you want to use. Whether they're Barrel Prismacolor markers, whether they're Winsor & Newton markers, applies to watercolor, although I will tell you, if you were to give me a watercolor set, I would not be able to do this. I personally make a big muddy mess. Watercolor is a more controlled medium, or probably more accurately, you need to be better at not controlling it and letting it do its thing, and I'm not good at that. One of the things I love about the markers is that you have a tremendous amount of control exactly where your color goes and your pigment goes. However, like watercolor, like those other mediums, this is a transparent medium. So you can blend your colors by layering them on top of each other. I tend to work relatively quickly because I don't want that to dry. So all the markers are a pigment suspended in a vehicle. In this case, the vehicle is like an alcohol solution, let's say. When you do watercolors, it's pigment suspended in watercolor. I'm going to work quickly because I want it to stay damp so that when I blend, you don't see streaks.
One of the things that she does differently that I've always learned to go light to dark, but it's entirely possible and it has been done, is to do dark to light. So it's not something I've played with watercolor, but it's definitely something I'm going to consider, especially when I'm working with other mediums too, because I have things like pencils and markers myself that I'd like to try and play around with in the future. So really, really great tools from her too. One of the other things that she mentioned is that sometimes she will take different references and kind of bring them together, which I think is really funny because in my last video when I was talking about coming up with the image of Sussy the bird from K-Pop Demon Hunters, I did the same thing. I took two different frames of a picture and I kind of put them together. So she referenced it's totally fine when you want to get proportions right to do things like that and to use your digital tools wherever you need to get the job done. And, she totally said, this is how I do things and there's nothing wrong with it. So I really, really appreciated that point of view because sometimes artists, it can seem like a bit of a club, and everybody has their own way that they think is right or wrong, but then there's a lot of artists that say there's no right or wrong way to do it, which I love that philosophy. That's the philosophy I like to go by, right? I just kind of do art for fun and to do what I feel and hopefully, translate, something visually beautiful to other people. So one of the other reasons why I went to room 3 is that I noticed that there were several panels from artists that are in the group Superani. Superani might be the correct way to pronounce that. And that is a group of artists that I've become really interested in lately. I did purchase the Dynamic Bible by Peter Hahn, and I'm probably going to challenge myself to do something from that book. It's on my list of things that I really want to do. And it's a really great fundamentals book, but also really teaches you how to draw organic figures. And Peter Hahn is a Superani artist. So the founder of Superani was Hyunjin Kim, And he was there. He was there specifically to have a panel to talk about Kim Jong-il, who is the kind of inspiration artist that kind of brought this collaboration together of artists, from my understanding. So he was dedicated to showcasing Kim Jong-il's work. He's collected thousands upon thousands of his pieces. They were friends. He had some really, really funny anecdotes and stories to share about Kim Jong-il, who sadly did pass away. And he's pretty much making it his life's work to share all of these great pieces of art and talk about this artist's life, which is so admirable, right? I mean, imagine having a fan so big that they dedicate their life to creating illustration books and exhibitions and go around the world to talk about your work. It's probably a lot of artists' dreams, right? And he did talk a lot about the techniques that Kim Jong-il used. One of the things that I'd love to master one day that Kim Jong-il was really, really good at, and it was the schooling in that he mentioned in like the Korean art schools was pretty strict. They had a lot of kind of drills and things that they had to do, and nothing that I ever did in my art school, by leaps and bounds. But he was talking about how they would like go on a trip, and then they would be tasked with doing 4 different drawings of the same thing from different perspectives, and they had like a certain time limit with which to finish it, which is crazy. And it was something like 4 hours, and I mean, what a challenge to give yourself, right?
Topic was hiking to a local hiking spot.
그러면 학생들은 그 주제에 맞게 이렇게 자유롭게 막 그려야 돼.
And then students are asked to draw the situation in multiple views.
이런 훈련을 고등학교 때 엄청 많이 합니다.
And all artists, they get trained in this matter during high school years.
하나의 예를 들면
For an example.
사정을 타고 음식을 배달하는 사람.
For an example, the topic one day we give out this topic to students. Someone is delivering food with riding a bicycle.
한국에서 만화가가 되기 위해서는 이런 시험을 치렀어.
So in order for them to become a cartoonist or go to college, all students needed to take a college exam test like this.
이거는 이제 김정기가 학생들한테 시범으로 그려줬던
These were demonstration of Kim Jong-il.
그럼 이런 그림들을 우리는 4시간 만에 그려야 돼.
So all of these had to be done in 4 hours.
Inspirations like that and hearing people talk about the processes that they went through to learn is so essential to like learning and growing as an artist, right? Although Kim Jong-il always said like anybody else that like couldn't draw just like him was being lazy. And I'm like, I can't argue with that. I can understand, like, he just didn't understand that other people couldn't draw just like him. He just was maybe naturally inherent at it. At least that's what Hyunjin Kim had mentioned. He says that every artist that he's taught and worked with has had to learn that skill. Kim Jong-il is the only person that he knew that he felt like had a born talent for it. So that kind of says a lot because they have a lot of great artists under their belt. And all of them had to practice and learn the skills. It wasn't just handed to them on a silver platter like it is some people. So reassuring things that I learned, from him. There was also Eliza Ivanova, who is another Super Annie artist. And her style, I will say, is not typical of the style that I, really follow or like resonate with, but she had a live drawing session and she used a reference and she decided to kind of go through the process of taking this reference image and transforming it into kind of a character that she wanted to portray, which I thought was really interesting. And you could live draw along with her. So I brought my sketchbook and pencil intentionally, knowing that I wanted to try and sketch along with what she was doing. So as she's going through and sketching, I am looking at my paper and I'm drawing the sketch. And I see the person next to me kind of looking at my paper and I'm like, oh, don't look at me. You don't want to know what I'm doing. It's all wrong, whatever it is. And I like felt a little embarrassed and nervous to be like live sketching in a room with other people that I'm sure draw every day for fun. And I wish, and hopefully one day I will get to the position in which I'll be able to make that time, right, to really dedicate to drawing every single day and learning every single day. But I was drawing along, and she does not measure. She just has studied so much of the human anatomy that she just kind of naturally understands proportions. I will say I was looking at it and everything seems so elongated to me. That really was a learning experience, that everything feels so elongated to me. When I try to draw something, it seems like too long. So when I draw things, I make them extra short. And that's exactly what I did with this figure. I did measure heads, even though she doesn't measure. I cheated. I drew, but I made the figure, I think, about 5 or 6 heads long. So my proportions were off by like 2-3 heads, right? The human figure's about, 7 or 8. So I, I look at the character, and I will share the character, and there's, it could be a stylistic choice. It's a very childlike figure, right? I tried to emulate kind of what she was doing, but, at the end of the day, I know that this is something I have a tendency to do, is I make things squattier and shorter, and it's not intentional. It's not a style choice. It's kind of a lack of practice and like understanding of anatomy. But, and it might just be also the way I see things, right? Like I said, when I see people drawing like figures, it seems like too long to me. So I don't know if that's also too because I enjoy kind of like chibi, cute, like aesthetic stuff. Like, I mean, I do tend to go for like cutesy things, even though that's not what I draw too, right? So maybe I'm just so used to seeing things in like kind of a squattier or shorter like proportion that's just what I tend to go to. But I think one of the things that I learned is that if that's what I'm going to do, then I need to lean into it properly and make it really intentional and study it in a way that it is, an intentional style choice. So that was a lot of information, and I can't tell you that I met any big celebrities or anything. I'm a big fan of Resident Alien, and I did go to that panel. It was very emotional because I just heard the show got canceled, and I really enjoy it, so I'm kind of bummed out about that. But other than that, I went on the convention center floor, and I met with some of the artists that I usually see every year. I will say that one of the artists on the convention floor, Martin Chu, has become really, I would like to say, a friend of mine over the years. I was going through my Facebook, and I found a memory of going to his booth back in 2018. I'm sure I've gone even sooner than that, but that's kind of like my earliest memory of going to his booth. But we have just started chatting really over the last few years, and he really, really encouraged me on this trip. I was telling him about how I'm trying to do this channel and make more art and study more and things like that. And just the words that he gave me were so encouraging, and I'm just so blessed to have connections and meet with such incredibly kind artists at San Diego. They're not big name people, but they're big to me. They're a big deal to me for sure. I love their work. I have their work all over the place. I'm sure if I show my like desk studio area, you will see tons of Martin's work all over the place, and lots of other people that I enjoy too. Like the artist on the shirt that I'm wearing here, I am going to share their shop too, because they're just amazingly lovely people. So, the experience, for Comic-Con to me is just like such more meaningful, and I've developed so many more deep connections than I have in years past, just kind of going and running around. And while I still do that, a lot of running around, staying busy, I really hope that in the future years, I'm going to spend more time in panels like in room 3, really learn more skills, meet more artists, and take away everything that I learn and integrate it into something that I can share with all of you. So I really appreciate you letting me ramble on about all of that. I really enjoyed my experience this year. I'm going to start taking more experiences like this and really channeling it into my art. So I hope you enjoy that. And for now, I think I will leave that at that, and I will see you in the next video. And please let me know if you've ever been to Comic-Con or if you've ever been to any of the other conventions across the country, because they're really great fun, and I hope that you've had some meaningful connections too. So please feel free to share those with me. All right, I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.